Why do deep thinkers feel isolated? Have you ever felt that the more you think, the lonelier you become? That the deeper you understand the world, the harder it is to connect with those around you? It's not your imagination. It's a pattern, one that history has repeated over and over again. Society doesn't fear intelligence. It fears what intelligence exposes. The illusion of certainty, the comfort of ignorance, the security of unquestioned beliefs. And when someone dares to think beyond the surface, society resists, not with logic, but with rejection. Socrates was sentenced to death, not for being wrong, but for asking the right questions. Galileo was silenced, not because his discoveries were false, but because they were inconvenient. Tesla died in poverty, not because his ideas lacked value, but because they threatened the status quo. This is not a flaw of the world, it is its nature. And if you are someone who thinks deeply, this is the reality you must face. But the Stoic does not complain. He does not seek validation. He masters himself so that the world's resistance does not break him. So, what can deep thinkers do? How do you navigate a world that does not always welcome clarity? Let's begin. Why does society resist deep thinkers? A Stoic perspective. The more one sees, the lonelier the path becomes. This is not a lamentation but an observation grounded in reality. Throughout history, society has resisted deep thinkers, not because they were wrong, but because they saw what others preferred to ignore. Yet, if we view this phenomenon through the lens of Stoicism, we find that rejection is neither a curse nor an injustice but a natural order of things. The wise do not complain about their isolation, they embrace it as an opportunity for self-mastery. 1. Intelligence challenges comfort, and people cling to familiarity. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Society, by its very nature, seeks stability. It thrives on traditions, shared beliefs, and the illusion of certainty. Deep thinkers, however, disrupt this equilibrium. They question the norms, challenge established truths, and force people to confront their own limitations. The human mind prefers cognitive ease, a state where familiar thoughts flow effortlessly. When faced with ideas that demand deep contemplation, the brain perceives them as threats rather than opportunities for growth. Epictetus taught that people do not fear reality itself but their interpretation of it. A deep thinker, by merely existing, presents an alternate way of viewing the world, and that is enough to unsettle those who have built their identity around unquestioned beliefs. Take Galileo, for example. His discovery that the Earth revolves around the Sun didn't change reality, it merely revealed it. Yet, society did not welcome this truth. It resisted, not because the truth was incomprehensible, but because it was uncomfortable. In the same way, deep thinkers today, those who question political narratives, social trends, or human behavior, face resistance not because they are incorrect but because they threaten the comfort of conformity. 2. The ego fears being outshined. Seneca once said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable, but the mind of the average person does not seek to be unconquerable, it seeks validation." Society values confidence over wisdom, certainty over depth. It rewards those who speak in absolutes, not those who contemplate complexity. This is why charismatic yet simplistic figures often gain influence, while deep thinkers are dismissed as impractical or overly philosophical. This phenomenon can be explained through the mirror effect. When people encounter someone intellectually superior, they don't just recognize intelligence, they see their own limitations reflected back at them. This is why physical superiority, strength, beauty, wealth, is often admired, while intellectual superiority is resented. A strong man does not make others feel weak, but a wise man makes others feel ignorant. And ignorance, when exposed, seeks to defend itself rather than be corrected. Consider Socrates, whose method of questioning exposed the contradictions in people's reasoning. He did not insult or ridicule, yet his mere presence caused discomfort. Why? Because he made people realize that much of what they believed was not based on wisdom, but on habit. This is why he was not celebrated in his time, but condemned. His execution was not about justice, it was about protecting the fragile egos of those in power. The Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where those with little knowledge overestimate their understanding, further explains this. Those who know little often believe they know more than they do, making them hostile toward those who challenge their shallow understanding. Thus, the deep thinker, who questions what is widely accepted, is seen as an outsider, an instigator, a disruptor. 3. Society prioritizes social harmony over intellectual truth. In Discourses, Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This is because progress does not align with the desires of the majority. Society has always prioritized group cohesion over intellectual pursuit. This is not a flaw, it is an evolutionary necessity. For thousands of years, human survival depended not on being the smartest person in the tribe but on being accepted by the tribe. Those who conformed were protected, those who challenged the group were cast out. This instinct remains hardwired in the human brain. Even today, workplaces favor agreeable employees over visionary ones. Schools reward memorization over critical thinking. Political systems uplift those who maintain stability, not those who introduce radical change. A 2021 study from Stanford University revealed that when people interact with an intellectual in a one-on-one setting, they feel less threatened. However, in group settings, the presence of intelligence triggers a threat response in the brain. This explains why deep thinkers often have meaningful conversations in private but struggle to be accepted in larger social environments. When intelligence disrupts the hierarchy of a group, people instinctively try to diminish or exclude it to protect their own standing. This is why Seneca advised, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. Deep thinkers must choose their social interactions wisely. Instead of seeking acceptance from the masses, they should cultivate relationships with those who appreciate depth. 4. How should a Stoic deep thinker respond? The world will always resist those who think deeply. But the Stoic does not expect the world to change. He changes himself. 1. Accept rejection as a natural order. A Stoic does not complain about society's resistance, he recognizes it as inevitable. Not everyone is ready to receive deep truths, and that is their journey, not yours. 2. Be selective in sharing your thoughts. As Marcus Aurelius advised, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. B1. Share wisdom with those who seek it. The wise do not argue with the foolish, they lead by example. 3. Cultivate inner strength over external validation. Seneca. He suffers more than necessary. Who suffers before it is necessary? Do not seek understanding from the world, seek it from yourself. The Stoic does not crave acceptance, he cultivates self-mastery. 4. Use solitude as a strength. Many deep thinkers feel lonely. But loneliness is not a punishment, it is an opportunity. Schopenhauer believed that solitude was the price of great intellect. The Stoic sees solitude not as isolation, but as time for refinement. Final thought. Intelligence is not a curse, it is a test. Society does not fear intelligence, it fears what intelligence reveals. And yet, the Stoic does not view this as a burden but as an invitation for growth. To see deeply is to be responsible for one's own mind. To understand more is to expect less from others. If you have ever felt isolated for thinking deeply, do not resent it. It is not a sign of your failure, it is proof of your clarity. And clarity is rare, which is why it is resisted. But the deep thinker, like the Stoic, does not measure success by acceptance. He measures it by how well he has trained his own mind. As Marcus Aurelius said, just that you do the right thing. The rest does not matter. How society has historically rejected great minds. A Stoic perspective. History does not celebrate great minds in their time, it resists them. The deep thinker, the philosopher, the visionary, they are rarely embraced by the world they seek to enlighten. Socrates was sentenced to death. Galileo was condemned for revealing the truth. Tesla died in poverty. Their crime was not ignorance but clarity. Yet, the Stoic does not view this as tragedy but as a test. To be ahead of one's time is to walk alone. And the wise man must accept this without complaint. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The rejection of wisdom is not new. It is not an injustice. It is the way of the world. And the Stoic does not waste energy lamenting what he cannot change. He does not ask why society resists truth. he strengthens himself to endure it. 1. Socrates. The price of questioning the world. Socrates did not tell people what to think. He only asked them to think for themselves. And for that, he was sentenced to death. His method, questioning assumptions, exposing contradictions, did not make him a criminal. Yet society treated him as one. Why? Because his wisdom forced people to confront their own ignorance. This is the nature of deep thinking. It does not offer comfort, it demands growth. And most people would rather cling to illusion than face the discomfort of self-examination. Socrates accepted his fate with the calm of a Stoic. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he curse the world for its blindness. Instead, he drank the poison with composure, proving that the mind remains free even when the body is condemned. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The rejection of wisdom is inevitable, but the deep thinker, like Socrates, does not fear rejection. He does not demand understanding, he only demands mastery over himself. 2. Galileo. Truth does not depend on acceptance. Galileo did not change the universe, he only revealed what had always been true. And for that, he was silenced. When he proved that the earth revolved around the sun, the world did not celebrate him, it imprisoned him. Not because he was wrong, but because his truth disrupted the comfortable lies society had long believed. This is the fate of those who see clearly. They do not invent truth, but they are punished for uncovering it. And yet, Galileo did not fight his sentence with outrage. Like a Stoic, he understood that truth does not require validation. The earth continued to orbit the sun, regardless of human denial. Seneca once said, "If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable." A wise man does not measure his progress by how many agree with him. He does not waste his breath convincing those who refuse to see. He speaks truth not to be accepted, but because it is in his nature to do so. Galileo's work was eventually recognized, but he did not live to see it. This is often the fate of deep thinkers. Their ideas outlive them, but society only embraces them when they are no longer a threat. A Stoic does not seek immediate reward, he plants seeds of truth, knowing that time will take care of the rest. 3. Tesla. A mind too far ahead. Nikola Tesla envisioned a world powered by free energy, but the world was not ready for him. His ideas threatened the industries built on profit, and so he was cast aside. His work shaped the future, but he died alone, penniless, and unrecognized. Tesla's fate was not a failure, it was proof of his clarity. The world resists what it does not understand, and the more visionary the mind, the greater the resistance. He was not bitter. He did not waste time fighting those who dismissed him. He continued to create, because that was his purpose. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, do what is right, the rest does not matter. The wise man does not need applause. He does not need recognition. He does his work because it is his duty, not for reward, but for the integrity of his soul. Tesla lived as a true Stoic, dedicated to his craft, indifferent to the ignorance of others. 4. The Stoic response to rejection. History proves that society does not resist intelligence itself, it resists what intelligence reveals. But the Stoic does not see rejection as suffering. He understands that wisdom has a cost, and he is willing to pay it. So how should the deep thinker respond? 1. Accept that rejection is part of the path. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The resistance of society is not a burden, it is the sharpening stone of the wise. 2. Do not seek approval, seek mastery. O Marcus Aurelius advised, do not waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. A thinker's worth is not measured by how many agree with him, but by his discipline in pursuing truth. 3. Remain indifferent to praise or criticism. Epictetus taught, if you wish to be free, desire nothing that depends on another. Society's opinions are fleeting. The deep thinker does not rise with applause nor fall with rejection. 4. Continue the work, regardless of recognition. Marcus Aurelius. Do what is necessary, and do it with dignity. The Stoic does not create for validation, he creates because it is his duty. Final thought. Intelligence is a test, not a gift. To see the world clearly is not a privilege, it is a trial. The deeper one thinks, the more one must endure. The Stoic does not resent this, he welcomes it as a test of strength. If you have ever felt isolated for your thoughts, know this: you are not alone. You are not wrong. You are simply ahead of your time. But remember, the Stoic does not dwell on the world's resistance. He focuses on what he can control: his mind, his actions, and his response to adversity. The rejection of wisdom is not an obstacle, it is proof that you are walking the path of great minds. As Marcus Aurelius said, just that you do the right thing. The rest does not matter. What can deep thinkers do? A Stoic perspective. The deep thinker walks a lonely path, not because the world is cruel, but because clarity comes at a price. To see deeply is to see what others ignore. To question is to disturb the comfortable. And so, society resists those who think beyond the surface, not because they are wrong, but because they make others uneasy. Yet, the Stoic does not lament this reality. He does not wish for the world to change. He masters himself so that the world's resistance does not shake him. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. If wisdom leads to isolation, then how should a deep thinker respond? Not with bitterness, not with frustration, but with discipline, acceptance, and mastery of the self. 1. Accept rejection as part of the path. The first lesson for a deep thinker is this: do not expect the world to embrace you. Great minds have always faced rejection, not as an injustice, but as an inevitability. Seneca reminds us, what need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. Yet, the Stoic does not weep over the nature of society. He recognizes that the world resists what it does not understand. Socrates was sentenced to death, not because he was wrong, but because he made people uncomfortable. Galileo was silenced, not because he lacked evidence, but because his truth threatened power. Tesla was ignored, not because his ideas were impractical, but because they disrupted the status quo. What does this teach us? That rejection is not proof of failure, it is proof of vision. The deep thinker does not measure his progress by how many understand him, but by how unwavering he remains in his pursuit of truth. Marcus Aurelius instructed, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. B1. Do not waste time arguing why society should value deep thought. Instead, embody it, live it, practice it. 2. Be selective about who you share your thoughts with. Not all minds are ready for depth, and wisdom given to the wrong person is wasted. Epictetus warned against sharing knowledge carelessly. Do not try to lead men who do not want to be led. If you find yourself constantly misunderstood, consider this: are you speaking to those who wish to understand? The deep thinker does not shout his wisdom in a crowded marketplace. He seeks out those who are prepared to listen. Socrates did not force his ideas on the masses. He engaged in discourse with those willing to challenge their own thinking. Seneca did not waste words on those who sought entertainment rather than understanding. Marcus Aurelius, though an emperor, wrote for himself, not for applause, but for clarity of mind. A Stoic chooses his audience wisely. He does not force enlightenment upon those who prefer darkness. Instead, he cultivates meaningful conversations with those who value them. 3. Master your emotions. Do not seek validation. The deep thinker often feels isolated, but this is not a punishment, it is a responsibility. Most people seek belonging at any cost, even at the expense of truth. The Stoic, however, seeks mastery over himself. Seneca taught, he suffers more than necessary. Who suffers before it is necessary? If you allow rejection to wound you, you have given power to the opinions of those who do not matter. A Stoic does not seek validation from society, he seeks alignment with his principles. The world may ignore you. This does not change the truth of your thoughts. The world may misunderstand you. This does not make your insight any less valuable. The world may reject you, but your mind remains your own. And that is where your strength lies. Instead of longing for understanding, a deep thinker should cultivate indifference to praise or criticism. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, just that you do the right thing. The rest does not matter. A Stoic does not depend on the world's approval. He depends only on his own discipline. 4. Use solitude as a strength. Loneliness is not a curse, it is an opportunity. The deep thinker should not fear solitude, but embrace it as a time for refinement. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." Great minds have always found strength in solitude. Socrates used contemplation to sharpen his reasoning. Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations not for the world, but for himself. Nietzsche warned that, "Whoever fights monsters must take care not to become one." Einstein once said that his greatest insights came from moments of deep solitude. Society conditions people to fear being alone, but Stoics see solitude as a tool for clarity and growth. The deep thinker must not fill his time with distractions, he must use it to cultivate wisdom. The masses seek comfort in company, the philosopher finds comfort in understanding himself. Final thought. Intelligence is a test, not a gift. To think deeply is not a privilege, it is a challenge. A challenge to endure misunderstanding, to stand firm in the face of rejection, and to remain unshaken by the opinions of the unwise. But remember, a Stoic does not complain. He does not expect the world to change, he changes himself. He does not seek validation, he seeks mastery. He does not lament his solitude, he uses it for his growth. If you have ever felt alone in your thoughts, know this. You are not lost, you are simply ahead. And as Marcus Aurelius wisely stated, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The deep thinker does not need society's approval. He only needs the discipline to remain true to himself. Intelligence is a mission, not a burden. Society doesn't fear intelligence, it fears what intelligence reveals. It fears the uncomfortable truths that disrupt illusions, challenge traditions, and expose limitations. The greatest minds in history were not celebrated in their time, they were rejected, silenced, or ignored until society was ready to accept what they had already seen. If you've ever felt isolated for thinking deeply, know this, you are not alone. The world does not always welcome those who see beyond the surface. But it is precisely these individuals who shape the future. So, what will you do with your gift? Will you shrink yourself to fit in? Or will you stand firm in the pursuit of truth? Will you seek validation? Or will you master yourself? The Stoic does not wait for the world to understand him, he understands himself. He does not seek acceptance, he seeks wisdom. And in doing so, he becomes unshakable. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, discuss it, and most importantly, live it. The world needs more thinkers, more questioners, more visionaries. Be one of them. What are your thoughts? Have you ever felt isolated for thinking deeply? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you want to explore more insights from history's greatest minds, subscribe and stay with us, there's more to uncover.